So now we're gonna have we're talking about education. We've got a different tack now about jobs and training. We've got a question from Jenny in North Tyneside. Jenny's not here this evening, so I'm going to read the question for her. She says, I am a trades union activist based in North Tyneside. I think that's important to her. I would be interested to know what the Mayor is doing to encourage and support the creation of well-paid, secure employment in the area, and also how the combined authority is supporting our residents to gain the training and education to obtain these roles. You've touched on before the Good Work Pledge and stuff like that, but what else is in place, Jim? What else are you working on?
Yeah, well, there's two things that I think Jenny's asking there, isn't she? So that's how we creating jobs and how are we helping people get the jobs. So if I take the second part of that first, one of the things we have devolved is what's called the adult education budget, and that's post-19. So if people leave school at 16 and are doing a BTEC or something like that, we don't cover that, but we do cover the skills beyond that. And this was devolved to us on the 1st of August 2020. And can you imagine a worse time to have something devolved to you? I asked my head of skills, Lee, that, and she said, no, there wasn't a worse time. So we didn't even know at that point whether the colleges were going to be open, how it was possible. So we had to pivot and make a lot of these courses available online and work directly with the providers and make sure that we were using good providers who were doing a good service. And there are some questions you can't answer. How do you train a chef online? Well, you can't, can you? So again, it was all the hybrid working. Despite that, with the same budget we had from central government, we increased the number of enrolments 10% at that time. 28,800 people in the first year got trained in employable skills. The number of people in the north of Tyne who have no qualifications dropped from 7.1% to 6% in that first year. So that's a big difference. It is making a difference. Now that's figures and stats, but it does translate into individuals' lives. And I've met loads of these people there's a young lad who went in a course and learned how to become a groundskeeper. And he's there mowing the grass at the cricket club. There's people who've trained to be HGV drivers. We work with the colleges. And I was at the Nectar Awards about how young people are training to be chefs and baristas and actually get good, well-paid jobs in hospitality, which is a notoriously poor industry for looking after it. Things we're doing there. But we're also making sure that they're inclusive. So we have, for example, our Carers Back to Work plan. And this is people who've been in home caring situations, looking after a relative. Usually, sadly, when that ends, it's because the person they've been caring for has died. But it may be that they haven't worked for 5 or 10 years. And that, right, you've got to go and get a job message when people say, hang on, can I have a little bit of time? No, off you go, is quite brutal. And we offer people support and advice and, for example, one-to-one coaching. So through the pandemic, when people can only get an interview online, well, if you haven't had an interview for 5 or 10 years and you've got to do an interview on Zoom and you've never known how to use Zoom, then what's your chances of getting a job and what's the psychological pressure on you? Yeah. So that coaching and a bit of mentoring, let's have some practices, and that one-to-one support is helping people, and it actually works. It's getting people back into work. And we're doing that with people, tenants in social housing, because they don't want people unable to pay their rent. So by directly working to help them get employed, then they can pay their rent. It's better for them, it's better for their health, it's better for the registered providers and the councils because the rent's being paid, no one's getting evicted. All of these it's that big circular approach. And so there's those things on a whole range of schemes, including young people who are not in employment, education or training. And with the government's Kickstarter scheme, which it's a good idea, give young people 6 months training. It was very badly conceived and delivered to the point that it almost entirely failed. But we did get some of them done here. We were actually, the combined authority decided to take it on because it wasn't really working. And we also supported those young people by asking the employers, would they sign up the Good Work Pledge? And in quite a few cases, you have young people who are doing these placements, but instead of being on the minimum wage, which if you're a 16-year-old is I think at the time it was 4.61 an hour or something like that. They got the real living wage. So they were getting more than twice as much. And if you want to encourage young people that working for a living is a good deal, paying them the real living wage, that convinces them more than anything else.
Yeah.
If you've got some money in your pocket at the end of the month.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's the sort of things we're doing to train people to get skills. I think the other part of Jenny's question was what we're doing to create jobs. And how long have we got? So there's a whole series of strategies, because this is the number one thing I'm responsible for. Central government have written in the devolution deal that we have to create 10,000 jobs over the next 30 years. Now, you hear all sorts of jobs figures. You know, a Greenport will create 1 squillion jobs. Talking to these people over here will create 2 squillion jobs. Our figures only count actual jobs, full-time equivalent. So 2 half-time jobs counts as 1 full-time job, for example. So it counts full-time job held for a year, where we could identify the actual real individual. We don't, because we keep GDPR and protect our anonymity. So they are real, and none of the multiplying of the supply chain jobs, none of this, oh, well, they must be spending money in their local economy, so we'll claim there's extra jobs in hospitality and car maintenance. None of that. It's just the real jobs that we definitely
Only
created,
the quantifiable.
and it only counts if our investment made it possible. So if I have a word and help a company get some money off central government, which I've done, that doesn't count in our total either. So these are only the ones from our direct investment.
So the plan from government was in
10,000 jobs.
10,000 jobs in 30 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
So one of the first companies we brought here was a company called Verisure, and they're based at Quorum Business Park in North Tyneside, not far from 4 Lane Ends Metro. And they do alarm systems, but they do them all over the country. And they're good qualities, and they're a good employer, and they look after their staff. And they gave them a 15% pay rise last year. And they have all sorts of grades. So they do have people on the phones, but they also have the HR people and the tech people and the accountants. Their national headquarters is here.
It's here now, yeah.
And I've brought in 7 big tech companies. So these are names that are big in the tech industry, perhaps not amongst the public, but Monster Labs, ThoughtWorks, Credera, Version 1, all of these people. And they're each bring in between 100 and 250 jobs. But a lot of these are very well paid jobs. A number of these companies, their average salary is 54,000. So these are high value jobs.
Sorry, I'm off.
So there's around 2,000 jobs in the digital sector we've created. But then, and this is the bit that really excites me, is working directly with the small firms. So we have what we call the Recovery Innovation Grant. Coming out of COVID, a lot of people had seen the world had changed. Their business models were, are people actually going to turn up to stuff? And one example is a company on the quayside in Newcastle. So the Bike Hub, a lot of people don't realise there's a business runs out of there called Saddle Skedaddle. And they are a cycling holiday company. And they'd obviously, their turnover had plummeted to 0 during COVID. They were on business support, but there's debt with that. They've got to pay back. And they wanted to grow and double their turnover. And with the help of the business support, it was identified that their way of dealing with their customers, and it's a word of mouth business, they were chasing emails. And so their staff were spending ages sorting through emails. And anybody knows what it's like trying to sort through emails, especially if you've got work emails, home emails, all the rest. And so a £10,000 grant from us got a developer to develop a bespoke system that allowed them a much easier way to keep track of the information and contact their customers. That allowed them to create the grand total of 2 new jobs. And I'm as proud of those 2 as I am of the 453 we've contracted with Verisure, which is actually going to go up to 1,000 anyway, because that's supporting local businesses to grow. So earlier today, I was in Cramlington. There's a company there called Merit. They make modular construction. So if you think of a COVID lab, you need clean rooms, you need special air filtering, all these things. And to build a new facility to do that takes ages if you're going to have the plumbers in and the plasterers and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
So build these things modular, they shrink wrap them, move them on a massive low loader and just load them into the buildings. Brilliant, actually. And they banned any use of fossil fuels. Those they'll only design and build you a building that is 100% green. And with some money that we advanced them, they have bought a derelict factory that had been empty for 10 years. It's in Cramlington. They're going to be extending that as well. They'll be putting the planning application in soon. But there's already 100 new people working in that business because it's growing. So this is how we're creating the jobs. They are real, and I've met these people, I've shook their hands, and it's changing people's lives in a big, big way.
Brilliant. And what's your current number where you're at? Of the 10,000 over 30 years?
We are
3 years in, you've got to...
3 years in, so we should be on 1,000, 4,586 jobs in that pipeline. That's 13 years work in 3 years.
In the way that you've talked about before, the way you measure them and the way you measure them, those are real jobs that...
Every pound we spend returns £3 to Treasury immediately in the payroll taxes. I wish they'd give me more money and I'd create more jobs.
Excuse me.